What's going on, everybody? Sergeant Argybright here today, and we will be reacting to the next part of the series, 1916. Yes, very interesting year. This was a year where the Central Powers actually did a lot of damage. They were doing good against Russia in this year. Um, anyways. And the Battle of the Somme, or I think that's what it's called, took place in this year, but I'm pretty sure, there's going to be a completely different episode on that, which is interesting. Yeah, let's just get right into it. World War One, 1916.
World War I was supposed to have been a short and glorious war. In 1916, a new kind of industrialized warfare had seen the death toll soar into the millions, with no end in sight. Naval blockades were beginning to cause shortages of food and fuel across Europe, while thousands of women had entered the workforce, replacing the men sent to fight in their millions. All sides were preparing for a long war.
War of attrition. Oops.
The war has raged for a year and a half as the Allies continue to battle the Central Powers, recently joined by Bulgaria. At sea, the British maintain their naval blockade of Germany,
How rude.
preventing the import of food and other vital raw materials.
Rude.
Germany has retaliated with a U-boat blockade of Britain, but has to limit its attacks to avoid provoking the neutral USA, whose citizens have already been caught in the crossfire. On the Western Front, French, British, and Belgian troops are dug in opposite the Germans, both sides trapped in the bloody stalemate of trench warfare. On the Eastern Front, the Russians have ended their long retreat and stabilized the line, but their army has suffered huge losses.
Oh yeah, pretty soon, Russia is going to do like an offensive in this little area, and then Romania is going to join the war.
On the Italian front, Italian troops have launched a series of costly, unsuccessful attacks against strong Austro-Hungarian defenses.
Why would you do that? Why? First of all, they're the Italians. Second of all, there's like mountains there. And third of all, there's a giant river. Why would you do that? That's a horrible idea. Why? I just don't understand.
While on the Balkan front, the Central Powers have overrun Serbia, whose army is forced to make a bitter retreat through the Albanian mountains. Now, on the 5th of January, Austro-Hungarian troops attack Montenegro. They are delayed at the Battle of Mojkovac, but 3 weeks later, Montenegro is forced to surrender. On the Caucasus front, the Russians launch a surprise winter offensive against Ottoman Turkish forces.
Wow.
6 weeks later, Russian troops occupy the city of Erzurum. In April, they capture the Black Sea port of Trebizond. Meanwhile,
they went far.
The British transport 2 motorboats to Lake Tanganyika in Africa. They finally arrive after a 10,000-mile trip by sea and land, and help the British seize control of the strategic
Wow, that is far.
lake from local German forces.
Wow, there's still... It looks... Okay, I don't know how the situation looks, but the way they're showing it with, like, no... Darn cat, he always wants to come in when I'm recording. Come on. Okay. Well, from the looks of it, it looks like Germany's Africa hasn't even been invaded. Oh, hi, Eclipse. It looks like they still have a lot of land. Not sure how it looks like in real life, though. I guess it's really. I guess it's just trying to show. How do I get off? He's like on my keyboard, and he. I guess it's trying to simulate the guerrilla campaign. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say. Oh my god! Stop! Gosh darn it, Eclipse. Okay. Let's just. Thank you, Eclipse. Thank you for interrupting. Anyways,
Mora Mountain Month in German Cameroon helped the British seize control of the strategic lake from local German forces.
Good, he's like...
The same month in German Cameroon,
Ow.
German troops besieged on Mora Mountain for 18 months finally surrender to the Allies. It marks the end of the Cameroon campaign.
Well, yeah, there's another mistake that I found with Africa, and that has a lot to do with Ethiopia. First of all, France, okay, follow my mouse. France owned a little piece there that they called French Somaliland. Now it has this really long name. It's like Djibouti or something. I don't know. And I'm pretty sure at this time Italy had like a long strip of land, and Ethiopia should be landlocked. I shouldn't have that whole long coast. Also, when are they going to talk about Persia being occupied? We're done. Oh, yeah. This one is a fun battle.
On the Western Front, the Germans unleash a devastating assault on the French fortress town of Verdun. German General Erich von Falkenhayn knows France will defend this symbolic town to the last man. His plan, in his own words, is to bleed France white in its defense. It is the strategy of attrition. Verdun becomes one of the most terrifying battles of the war, a mincing machine, where infantry divisions are destroyed almost as fast as they can be fed into the line.
Oh. By the way, divisions are pretty large. They usually have like thousands of troops in them. So the fact that they're getting destroyed definitely says something.
In Britain, 1 million men have already volunteered for military service.
Wow.
But the government realizes it won't be enough. Britain becomes the last major power to introduce conscription.
The last?
That spring, on the Western Front, British troops are the last to be issued with steel helmets.
It's so interesting, though, how, can you stop? That hurts. They have like this humongous empire, and yet they're not really focusing on having ground troops. Like, can you imagine what would have happened if there was like large-scale revolts in Africa? I don't know. That thought just popped into my head. And also, it's going to talk about the helmets. And what's interesting is that these claws are like digging into my abdomen. Wow. Britain and France, their helmets were mostly this applies to Britain. Their helmets were uh they could be mass produced really easily, but they weren't as good as the German helmets. But the German helmets, like in quality, they can only be produced. They just couldn't be produced as much or as fast. Ow! But it's interesting how Britain was the last power to have steel helmets. That is interesting.
The nature of trench warfare produces a high proportion of head wounds. The German Stahlhelm, the French Adrian helmet, and the British Mark I steel helmet offer limited protection from shell splinters and shrapnel. Neutral Portugal has been cooperating with the British, which seems to offer the best chance of holding on to her African colony, Portuguese Angola. On the 9th of March,
What about Mozambique?
To her African colony, Portuguese Angola. On the 9th of March, Germany retaliates by
So what are they saying?
British, which seems to offer the best chance of holding on to her African colony, Portuguese Angola.
Wait, why? Why do they need help to hold it?
On the 9th of March, Germany retaliates by declaring war on Portugal.
You don't even border them, not even in Africa. I don't know what the heck you're doing right now, Portugal. But it's weird.
On the Eastern Front, Russia launches an attack near Lake Narok to relieve pressure on the French at Verdun. But it's a disaster. There are 100,000 Russian casualties, and the attack fails to divert any German troops from the fighting at Verdun.
Oh, wow.
In
That's like a
Dublin,
5-12.
Irish Republicans launch an armed revolt against British rule.
Oh, yeah.
It
The
becomes
Easter
known
Rebellion.
as the Easter Rising, and is put down after
I thought it was called the Easter Rebellion.
6
Whatever.
days of street fighting.
Just look at him now. I don't know if y'all can see him. Look at him.
In the Middle East, after a 5-month siege, British forces at Kut surrender.
Oh.
General Townsend leads 9,000 British and Indian soldiers into captivity. About half later die from starvation or disease.
Well, that sucks.
Britain wants Arab support in its fight against the
Oh, the Arab revolt. Oh, gosh. This was a disaster for the Ottomans. Also, why doesn't it show that the Ottomans have troops near the Suez Canal?
Ottoman Empire. So it's promised Arab leaders an independent Arab state.
But guess what? That never happened. They never kept their promise. Okay, but also, it was not supposed to look like that. They were supposed to have the entire Arab Peninsula, I think. Except for the British colonies that were already there in the south. Also, it doesn't show it, but Britain has colonies in southern Arabia, and like some in modern day Yemen, and United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain, or whatever you want to call it. And yeah, and Qatar.
After the war. But now, Britain and France secretly sign the Sykes-Picot Agreement, planning after the war to divide the
Oh, wow. It's incredible to me how this did not happen.
Middle East.
Like, literally, it did not look like this at all in real life.
The British and French zones of control. Unaware of this deal, Hussein bin Ali, Sharif of Mecca, leads the Arabs in revolt against Turkish Ottoman rule. In the Battle of Mecca, his forces seize control of the Holy City. On the Italian front, Austro-Hungarian forces launch a surprise attack at Asiago.
Oh yeah, they actually have a lot of success. I think they, reach Venice.
Italian defenses give way. Austro-Hungarian troops are poised to break through into northern Italy. That month in the North Sea,
not yet.
the German High Seas Fleet clashes
Battle of Jutland!
with the British Grand Fleet at the Battle of Jutland. In the only major naval battle of the war, the British suffer heavier losses, but claim victory as the German fleet withdraws and does not re-emerge from its base for the rest of the war.
Interesting. Oh, even though, Britain took more losses, keep in mind that Germany does not have the same supplies as the Entente. The Entente can way more easily replenish their resources and troops and all of that. While the Central Powers cannot. They are literally starving. Is this going to talk about Russia and with
For the
Austria-Hungary.
summer of 1916, the Allies have planned major simultaneous offensives against the Central Powers, from east and west. Now they are needed more than ever to relieve pressure on the French at Verdun and the Italians at Asiago. The Russians launched their attack first.
Oh, yeah.
On the Eastern Front, General Alexei Brusilov has carefully maintained the element of surprise. His troops break through the enemy lines, in some places advancing 60 miles and taking 200,000 prisoners.
Wait,
This
what?
brilliance and taking 200,000 prisoners.
Wow.
This brilliant,
That is a
though
lot.
costly Russian attack achieves its aim, as the Central Powers are forced to redeploy troops from other fronts.
Like, just when you thought when Russia was finished, they just come back and, yeah, they just knock them back and take 200,000 prisoners. Wow. That's not even considering how many losses they have.
To shore up the line.
Also, why does it show this a long line for the battle thing? For the battle line? You know, like where they're. Just the border. The border where they're fighting, but it doesn't show it here or here. I mean, I guess that's the trenches, but I'm pretty sure they had trenches in Austria-Hungary and Italy, right? Maybe.
At sea, British cruiser HMS Hampshire, en route to Russia, hits a mine and sinks off Orkney. Among the 650 dead is Britain's iconic Secretary of State for War, Lord Kitchener.
Oh, wow.
3 days later, in the Adriatic, Italian troop ship Principe Umberto is sunk by a German submarine. It's the deadliest sinking of the war, with 1,900 lives lost.
Wow. That's like on par with the Twin Towers and being destroyed in 9/11.
On the Western Front, Britain and France launched their major summer offensive, the Battle of the Somme.
Oh,
Hopes
yeah.
are high for a breakthrough, but the first day is a disaster. A long Allied artillery bombardment fails to knock out German defences, and waves of British infantry are cut down by machine gun fire as they advance into no man's land. In the space of a few hours, the British suffer 57,000 casualties, a third of them killed. It's the worst day in the history of the British Army. But
Wow.
more attacks are ordered, and the battle will rage for another 5 months.
Wait, what?
And the battle will rage for another 5 months.
5-month-old. That is a long time to have a battle. Wow.
Encouraged by the Russian advance, Romania joins the Allies.
Oh gosh, that map is not very good.
But despite an initially successful advance into Transylvania, Romania quickly faces a counter-offensive from German, Bulgarian, and Austro-Hungarian forces. The Allied force at Salonika tries to support Romania by launching their own offensive towards Monastir. With Serbian troops in the lead, there are small gains, but dogged Bulgarian resistance prevents a breakthrough. On the Western Front, General von Falkenhayn finally calls off the attack at Verdun. The French army has honored their commander, General Nivelle's promise. Ils ne passeront pas. They shall not pass. But victory comes at a terrible price.
What? Oh, they're not the same.
365,000 casualties. The Germans lose almost as many.
Yeah, it's interesting how Germany's plan was to bleed the French dry when they just bled themselves dry in the process.
Verdun remains one of the bloodiest battles in human history.
Jeez.
For his defeat at Verdun, Falkenhayn is sacked, and Germany's heroes of the Eastern Front, von Hindenburg and Ludendorff, take command in the west.
Oh, that should help.
Meanwhile, the Battle of the Somme.
Well, I mean, they're completely different conditions, though. The western front and the eastern front are completely different. Like, that just seems weird how you can just put them in the western front and see what happens.
Continues. Near the village of Flers, the British introduce a new weapon they hope can break the deadlock of the trenches.
And what is that?
It is called
Tank.
the tank.
Oh.
But
Wait,
despite the
who?
trenches, it is called a new weapon. Continues. Near the village of Flers, the British introduce
Oh,
a
the
new
British.
weapon
Okay,
they
good,
hope
okay.
in number and too prone to mechanical failure to make any real impact. On the Eastern Front,
Yeah, it took people a while to figure out how to properly use tanks. And then, like, later in the war, Germany came out with their own tank, and it was just a box with a bunch of sticks, sticking out of them. So yeah, that one was very interesting. Yeah.
Russia's Brusilov offensive comes to an end. Casualty estimates vary wildly, but it's clear both sides have suffered catastrophic losses. Neither the Russian nor the Austro-Hungarian army ever fully recovers.
That is a lot of people. Wow. That is a lot. 2.4 million people dead.
On the Italian front, heavy fighting rages throughout the autumn, as Italian forces make repeated costly assaults against Austro-Hungarian positions along the Isonzo River.
It's sometimes as if, like, these countries don't learn their lesson. And they just constantly, attack with trenches, attack their trenches and all of that, and they die, and they take a little bit of land. And, the same pattern repeats for, like, 4 years. Well, not really 4 years. You know what I mean. I think it would have been good for these generals to have studied the American Civil War, because trenches were used a lot, and for them to figure out what the Americans did, their tactics to try to overcome the trenches, that could have helped a lot. Oops.
The Battle of the Somme comes to an end amid autumn rain and mud. The Allies have advanced 10 miles at the cost of 600,000 casualties.
Wow.
German losses are about 450,000.
I thought they would have lost a lot less than that. Wow.
The Allies reassure themselves that this is a winning strategy, because at this rate, Germany will run out of men first.
That is true.
Meanwhile, disaster engulfs Romania as the country is overrun by the Central Powers. Romanian forces suffer 250,000 casualties.
Wow.
Remnants of its army take position alongside the Russians on the Eastern Front. That winter, Franz Joseph, Emperor of Austria since 1848, dies.
Oh no.
He is succeeded by his son, Karl. In Britain, Prime Minister Herbert Asquith is forced from office and succeeded by David Lloyd George.
Wait, why?
While General Joffre is replaced as French Commander-in-Chief by General Nivelle, who promises victory through bold, aggressive action.
Really?
Amid the
bold, aggressive action. That is not what you want in a trench warfare situation.
comings and goings, U.S. President Woodrow Wilson's attempts to mediate a peace settlement come to nothing.
And Woodrow Wilson was stupid and hypocrite. And one of the things that gets me very, very upset was the fact that he had these, like, really dumb 13 points, whatever they're called. I mean, I'm not trying to say that they're dumb, but the way he tried to implement them was dumb. And one of the points was, okay, all ethnicities and languages get self-determination. And yet, the Allies or the Entente draw these crazy, wacky borders in Austria-Hungary, where literally Hungary is surrounded by foreign Hungarians, Hungarians in different countries. And same with Austria. There's like millions of Germans outside of their territory. In Hungary, there's millions of Germans outside their territory. And Romania doubles in size, which is incredible. Wow. Um, yeah. Woodrow Wilson was not very good, and he was weak.
Neither side
Like, yeah,
is willing to make
he was weak.
concessions. Epic History TV relies.
Okay, that was the next part. I think that was part 3. But yeah, that was really interesting. Thank you all for watching, guys. That was a great episode. Very interesting. I think I think this year was actually okay. I lied about it being good for the Central Powers. I think this was the year where the Central Powers like they just used way too many of their resources. Like if you think about Verdun, and then the Somme, and then the Battle of Jutland, and then the offensive into the Austria-Hungary and their positions, and Romania joining the war, Italy just attacking them a bunch. It's I think this was the year where their resources are starting to dry up because they have taken a ton of casualties this year. But yeah, anyways, that was a fun episode. Thank you all for watching, and make sure to like and subscribe. I've been getting a lot of subscribers recently, more than usual, so thank you all. And if you're new, cool, good for you. Um, yeah, goodbye.